in that. There are 500 verses concerning faith. And you know, sometimes we probably need to read all 500 of them in a single day just to remind us we're supposed to be believing. When our faith is weak, we sometimes need that. There are 2,000 verses concerning your possessions and your money. Okay, so 500 on prayer, 500 on faith, 2,000 concerning your possessions and giving, your money. It might mean that either we're slow to learn, or it's something that's important to God, or maybe both. Okay? Jesus talks about money 16 times in the 38 parables. Okay, so it's not something we can, just ignore. Let me go to the next slide. That beautiful red color. Turn me off a little bit. Oh, this one got your blue? See, so we can play the whatever game. Okay, so some call the first fruits the tithe. Some people call it the principle of the firstborn. But what we do know is that God has created a principle of giving. And that principle is essential to how we conduct our lives. So whatever name you want to give to it, it is a principle that we are supposed to live by and we're not supposed to abandon. We go to the next slide. And it's really important. Can you all read this with me? Are you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Giving to give, not to get.
Now, I have heard a lot of people say, if you give, God will bless, if God will you'll get. And what that tends to do is in our hearts, it teaches us to be greedy and selfish. I'm only giving so I can get. But what God really wants us to know is that if we will give, we will be able to give more. And as we give and give more, then blessing will come to our life. But we're not giving to get, we're giving to give. And to learn how to be better givers. Next slide, please. Exodus chapter 23, verse 19 says, "The first of the fruits of your land you shall bring into the house of the Lord your God." Leviticus says, "As for the offering of the first fruits, you shall offer them to the Lord." Hit that button one more time. And one more after that, please. The first principle is that the first fruits are given to God as an offering. We bring them to. Now, some of you people, you're probably thinking, I've heard so much about this all my life, and I'm listening to this. And you really practice it. You give. But I want to challenge you that God may be wanting to challenge you to give more than what you've been giving, or more than what you think you can give. Every firstborn belongs to God. How many of you are a firstborn child? If you're the firstborn child in your family, raise your hands nice and high. Do you realize that you belong to God? You are the first fruits. Now, in the Old Testament days, among different people groups, oftentimes the firstborn child was sacrificed in the fire to Moloch. Do you remember reading about that? I'm so glad you firstborn were not sacrificed in the fire, okay? But among the Israelites, when a firstborn child was born, that child was redeemed in the Old Testament by a spotless lamb. You might think of some threads through this spotless lamb. And so when we think about the first that we give, we can give the first of our time. Everybody gets 24 hours, right? Each day. We all get 7 days a week. There are days I've asked for 8. So far I've not gotten them, but there's sometimes I could use an 8th day in the week just to help me out. But when we give our first fruits, our gifts, our time, our resources, our talents, it takes a measure of faith. We have to believe that as we give, that God is more than enough to meet all of our needs. It takes faith. That's okay. Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones tells a story about a farmer. Now, how many of you have ever farmed? Are you all city dwellers from the Philippines? A couple of you got to farm. Farming is really hard work. And you have to start early in the morning, you end late at night, and you're always hot and sweaty. So even if it gets cold, even if you lived up in Boggy or someplace up in the mountains, even though it gets cold, you still get hot and sweaty. Because this is reality. But he talked about this one farmer who came in and he was very happy and he said to his wife, "You're not going to believe what's happened." He was so excited. He was like, "You're not going to believe this." And she was like, "Okay, what is it?" He said, "Our favorite cow, our best milker, has just had twins, 2 calves." And he was so excited. And then he said, "I think we should consecrate one of those calves to God." And so we'll bring them up together, and when the time comes, we'll sell one and keep the proceeds, and we'll sell the other one, and we'll give the money to God. And so his wife asked him, "Well, which one is the one for God?" And he said, "Well, we don't have to worry about that now. We'll just raise them up, and when the time comes, we'll just do what I said we do." So they went off, and they went on. A few months later, the farmer comes into the house, and he's really sad, and he looks at his wife and goes, "Oh, you're not going to believe what's happened. You're just not going to be able to resist." And she says, "Oh, what is this? Well, I have really bad news." And she said, "Well, what is the bad news?" And he says, "The Lord's calf died." And she said, "Well, what do you mean the Lord's calf died? We didn't decide which one belonged to the Lord." He says, "Well, I always kind of thought in my mind it would be the white one, and the white one's died. God's calf has died." The reality is that it's always the Lord's calf that dies. You think about setting stuff aside, but unless we actually identify what we're going to set aside and deliberately set it aside, inevitably the Lord's calf dies. You guys would never do that. It's only me, right? I'm the only one that ever does those kinds of things. Go to the next slide, please. And here this is what we see. In the process of time, this is Genesis chapter 4, verses 3 to 5. It came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. Now I have a question. Why didn't God accept Cain's offering? It's not a rhetorical question. I'd like an answer. Okay, what do you mean by the manner of giving the offering?
What he meant is he chose not the good ones, but rather just anyhow.
He just chose anyhow. You are really right on track there. Because what we understand about Cain, right? If you look at the verse, now I added the emphasis. It says, in the process of time. So it wasn't right away. It wasn't at the beginning of the harvest. But in the process of time, right? Harvest has been going on. Cain's been going out to the fields. All the workers are gathering all the grains, all the fruits, all the grapes, whatever's from the vines. It says that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. It doesn't say it's the first fruits. It's in the process of time. He's waiting to see, what's my harvest going to look like? How many bushels of wheat am I going to have? How many bags of rice am I going to get? How many bananas are my tree going to produce? How many pineapples from my garden will I have? And so in the process of time, he finally brings an offering. But Abel brings the firstborn of his flock. Abel doesn't know if there's going to be any other lambs born. He hopes there will be. He probably had some pregnant sheep and he was anticipating more. But he had no guarantees. He brings that first lamb as the offering, not knowing what the future would produce or what the future would hold. He didn't know. It could have been that every other lamb that was born could have died at birth, and he would have had nothing. But he chose instead to give that first one, where Cain said, well, let me see how good my crop really is, and then after I've checked it all out, then I'll give to God. God does not want us doing that thing. And so Cain, his offering isn't accepted. But then he gets upset and frustrated, and it's like, what's wrong with my offering? It wasn't a matter of what he gave. As far as grain was fine. Grain was no better or worse than a sheep. Abel was a shepherd. Cain was farmer. It was a matter of what did he give? Did he give the first fruits? No, he waited to make sure that there was going to be more of a harvest. We can go to the next slide. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Consecrate to me all the firstborn. Whatever opens the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and beast, is mine." So every firstborn belongs to God. If you get that one more time, it'll say that. There it is. And so, 16 different times in Scripture, God says the firstborn is to be sacrificed or redeemed by a spotless lamb. John declares, "Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world." John 1:29. Jesus was God's firstborn, the clean, perfect sacrifice. We see this in Romans 8:29. In Exodus, the firstborn was sacrificed, like I talked about, but they were redeemed by the perfect lamb. Even as we look at the principles of tithing and giving, we see in this God already is speaking to us about his plan of salvation. He's talking about how he's going to redeem each of us, the gift that he wants to give to us, the gift he wants in our lives. Next slide, please. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase. Your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. Proverbs 3:9-10. If we give God the first fruits, the rest will be fine. Your barn's going to be full. Your vat's going to overflow. You know, if you think about this in modern day terms, for those of us who don't have farms right now, okay? I don't have a farm currently. But think about this. My wallet won't be empty. My cupboards will have food. My fridge will have milk. Okay? There's always food there. But it's because of what I've done in preparation for it. Okay? Let's go to the next slide. We'll get back to that in a minute. So the firstborn belongs to God. And the first fruits, if you keep going, the first fruits are given as an offering. So we have Abraham gives to the priest Melchizedek, sorry, suddenly I want to say Malachi, that's who it is. A tenth. It says he gave him a tithe of the all. The word tithe just means a tenth, or 10 parts. What are 10 parts? See that in Genesis 14:20. And then Jacob goes and makes a vow in Genesis 28:22. He says, "And the stone which I set up as a pillar shall be God's house, and all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you." And so we see this principle being worked out in the Old Testament where time and again, when God has brought blessing, or God has brought something into the lives of the people, they are saying, "I'm giving a portion of this back to God." Now, of course, we know from studying the Bible that Melchizedek is a picture of Christ. Some people say he was a pre-incarnation visit of Christ on earth. But here is, and he's also, Melchizedek is described as someone who has no ancestry, has no father, no mother, no beginning, no end. He just is, which kind of gives us this picture of Christ. But he receives a tenth from Abraham. This is a long time before the law was written, okay? Long time before Leviticus, long time before Deuteronomy, about 400 years before. In Malachi chapter 3, verse 6, God says, "I do not change." And there's some people that are like, well, maybe we can do it a little differently, But God says he doesn't change. He's consistent. What was true yesterday will be true today, will be true tomorrow. Because God does not change. And so when we think about what it is that he has asked us to do with regard to offerings and tithe, we need to recognize that he's not changing his mind. He's consistent in this. So we're not looking at Old Testament law. We're looking at a principle for life. Something that we're going to see moved on. If we could go to the next slide. The tithe is the first fruit of what God gives to us. The first fruit belongs to God, not to us. And next, when we give God the first fruit, the rest will be blessed. Now, I need a volunteer, okay? Someone who's just feeling especially bold and brave, awake today.
Naglalaro.
So, everybody round of applause for our volunteers. Do you like payday?
Yeah.
And how often do you get paid? Once, yeah, me too. Isn't that a bummer? It's like you get paid, and it's like, whoa, money, and then like 5 days later, it's like, no more. And you have that problem too? Oh, yeah, me too. Yeah, some days. So then I turn to George and say, thanks, man. Yeah, see, there's, okay. So payday comes along, right? And you get cash, and you get check. Or do they deposit in their account? But suddenly these numbers appear in the bank account, right? But what happens if you got paid in cash, right? One. Hey, no. Oh, no. And you almost got both. but no, not. You have to wait till the end of December. Then the bonus goes. So, okay, so your paycheck comes. Okay, so you got your paycheck. Now the question is, what do you do? Which one of these is the first fruit? It should be the very nice one. So if it's nice, it gets to be first. So what happens if the first thing you harvest from your garden is a tomato with a worm in it?
I will choose the previous one.
Okay, just checking. Okay. So this is the first one. Sure. You're positive. You don't have any other criteria. Hey, do you guys agree with them? Is it the first one? Or is it the prettiest one? No? Okay, so which one, okay, so help him. Which one of these is the first one?
Actually, that's all is the first one. The first.
All of it's the first one? Okay, but so is he
10%.
supposed to give all of his paycheck?
10%.
Okay, so if it's 10%, well, which one of those is the first one then? The one on his left or the one on his right?
No,
So that one, is that still the pretty one? That's the pretty one. It's the one on the right. Well, okay, but do you have a phone bill? Did you pay your phone bill? Oh, she paid. Do you have to pay rent? Yeah, who pays the rent? Can I have her at my house? So who pays the electricity?
She's the treasurer.
Can you give her the money? So you don't pay any bills. She takes care of all the bills, and you just make the money, and she spends it. Okay, so then my question is, what bill do you pay first?
Take the 10% first.
You pay all the house bills first, okay. Here. Yes, we're taking, just hold on. Okay, so we've got to take rent, and I want electric and gas, and I want water. Okay, do you guys eat? Okay, well, okay, so I want some food money. Do you guys ever buy presents for anybody?
Kuhaan pang 10%.
Gifts?
Now, the rest, pwede na i-gastos.
Do you ever buy new clothes? Do you ever get to go like out and see a movie or go out to eat or do you doing that kind of stuff? So where's that?
I'll skip the movie.
If you skip the movie, all of this other stuff went out.
Walay kay Lord. Walay kay Lord.
And what is it
Dapat
the guy's
first
telling us?
patulog.
If you have all of this, what's he saying? What are we supposed to do first?
We give to God first. Then,
We pay our tithe first. So it doesn't matter if it's the pretty bill, if it's not the pretty bill, whatever. When we get paid, whether we get paid in rice, we get paid in cash, we get paid in whatever we get, we take the first one. whichever one it is. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter which one I take. It's whichever one I spend first. That's my first fruits. So if you pay your Visa bill first, you missed out on an opportunity for God's blessing. Because he says to give him the first fruits. And then our challenge is to have the faith to believe that if I give God my $5, then he's going to make the $45 enough. The 90% is going to be enough to take care of all of my needs and a lot of my wants too. That's what he's trying to do. No, it's for you. No, it's yours.
Ambil na lang na. Maulaw begitu ya, ambil na. Ambil na.
You got paid, but I did take your title, right?
Da.
And we'll make sure that, well, actually, I should give you the title. You can put it in the office here. But what we have is we've got God giving us this principle. And you know, the thing is that sometimes when we look at our bank account, and of course you have to be really careful, because here in Singapore, we have this thing called gyro. How many of you do gyro? I do some gyro stuff, and so it's really important that the tithe comes out before gyro starts taking stuff, right? So that I can really get my first fruits out of there. Because gyro likes to just ding my account without any permission at all. Even though that's a simplistic illustration, it's really true of our lives. If we don't purposely set our heart to give that first part of our pay, all the other things will just start pulling away at it, and the next thing you know, you're left with nothing in your hand. And it's like, what do I do now? God has given us this principle. He's talked to us about tithing, about giving, so that he can then demonstrate his faithfulness. When we put our faith in the fact that he can make 90% stretch to cover all of our needs, all of our responsibilities, then he's able to make that 90% stretch. Back a long time ago in the dark ages when I was very young, you know, we sang a song this morning that was written in, I hadn't sung it in a long time, God of All Creation, written in 2000. Some of you didn't exist then. Some of you were very young then. I was not quite so young then. But back in those early days, when George and I were first married, initially, he got a really big salary, guys. I want to tell you, he got paid a lot of money. It was like amazing, a whole $100 a month. It was like, you think I'm kidding? He really did get paid $100 a month. And then, you know, and then we, after the $100, of course I was working, so I made a slightly better salary. Not a whole lot better, because I only got paid 10 months a year, but, you know, I made a little bit more. But then, you know, then we went, and we were youth pastors back in those days, and then we went and we pastored our first church. This is back in the early 80s, okay, 1984. And we went up to this desert. I remember thinking that it was the moon. This is fair. People go out and rake their sand. You don't have a lawn to take care of, so you can. Anyway, so we got there, and when we did our budget, how many of you have a budget? No budget? Oh no! You have a budget?
No.
Yes, budgets are important. I didn't tell Beverly I was going to do this. Beverly and I were working on a budget for her. We were projecting how much income, now that she's almost finished with school, how much income did she have to make in order to take care of her basic necessities in life, right? And she was surprised at how much money it really takes. But one of the things we were talking about, tithe. And she, you know, we were looking at, you know, what are all the things, her expenses, all of that kind of stuff. And so I said, so how much are you giving for tithe? And she named an amount. And it was like, it was more than 10%. And I was like, well, that's great. We wrote it down, added it to the budget, you know. Meant that she had to earn more money, but, you know, it was all good. It was more than 10%. If you don't have a budget, it's going to be really hard to know when God blesses you and when he makes the money stretch. So George and I had this budget. And in our budget, we had a family of 4, Okay, we had 2 children, family of 4, and our budget for food and cleaning supplies, like your toilet paper, your dish soap, and food, for 4 of us for 1 week was $24. Hey, that's all we had. Couldn't steal it from any place else. I guess I could have gone and stole it. No, I couldn't steal it from any place else. We had $24. And we had this belief that God has called us to be hospitable, that if there's a need for someone to have a place to stay, or if there are people that you know that are hungry, you should invite them over and you should feed them, right? And we did that. We had extra people at our table almost every day of the week, but at least 3 or 4 times a week we fed other people. And at different times we had people actually come and live with us. And I will tell you truthfully, we paid our tithe, we did all of that. To this day, I could not tell you how we actually did everything with $24. I was frugal. I bought things on sale. I looked for, what's the best deal, how many meals can I make this stretch? I did do that. There were times I prayed and said, God, okay, we've got 10 people, I prepared food for 5. It's up to you. I know the loaves and the fishes kind of deal, so it's up to you. Make sure everybody gets fed, nobody should walk away hungry, those kinds of things. But there were times, literally, when I added up the receipts at the end of the week, we had spent 2 or 3 times more than what our budget said we were allowed. But if you looked at our bank account, there was still money. And there should not have been any money, because I'd already spent more money than we had. And there weren't any extra deposits, okay? So I still cannot explain to you, and that went on for 3 years. I can't explain to you how God did it. I don't have an explanation. I just know He did it. And so what that did for me is it really built my faith up, because I knew that I could trust God. So that, as long as I was doing my part, and my part involved several things. It involved not just George and I giving our tithe, but it meant opening our home to people with needs. It meant being willing to have people over to eat, even those days when you're really tired and the last thing you want to do is cook another meal, or any of those kinds of things. But by doing that, we proved God. So if we look at the next slide, right? It says, will a man rob God? You have robbed me. But you say, in what ways have we robbed you? And he says, in tithes and offerings. Malachi 3:8. Next one. It says, you are cursed with a curse. You're cursed with a curse. You're cursed with a curse, for you have robbed me, even this whole nation. Keep going, the next one. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and try me now in this, says the Lord. And if we go to the next slide, it will say, trust me and see if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you such blessings that you will not have room enough, that there will not be room enough to receive it. I can't even read anymore. But the reality is that God wants to pour out blessing on us, but He requires some obedience. And again, this is not giving to get. This is giving so that we have more to give. If we will open up our hearts, our lives, our doors, God will multiply things for us. And sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's other things. But God says, try me in this. You obey me and see what I do. Test me. See what's going to happen. And do you know that when we look at giving, when we look at tithing is a test. It's a test of our hearts. It's a test of, will we obey God and trust Him? But it's also a test of, can I be generous? Can I give with an open hand? Or do I give and then I think, what did I just do? I'm not going to be able to go do whatever, right? Or inevitably, right? You give away your last money and the washing machine breaks, right? And I think, I should never have done that because now I can't do it. But I can tell you, if your washing machine breaks and God truly does know the needs in your life, if you lay hands on your washing machine, you can pray for it and it can be restored to life. I'm serious, you guys. My mom and dad went through a period of time where my father went almost 16 years without a pay increase because he chose to step off of the corporate ladder with IBM. He'd been working in their headquarters. God gave him an option. You can raise your children and disciple them and be active in your church, or you can go up the corporate ladder. I will bless you in both ways, but in both places, but the blessing will be very different. And my father decided he wanted to be able to, going up the corporate ladder would have meant lots of travel. He chose to stay home and help to raise his children, be actively involved in his church, and he stayed in the company, but he flatlined. Flatlined, right? And the washing machine broke. It was leaking water out of the bottom. And I remember seeing my mom and dad laying hands on the washing machine and saying, God, you know there is no money to replace or to repair this machine, but you also know we have 4 children who need clean clothes. So would you please fix the machine? And that machine ran for another, I think it was 3.5 years. And the day my father got a raise, the machine broke, and there was no praying for its resurrection after that, because God provided the money to buy a new one, okay? So I'm just saying, it's, you know, God will provide for us when we are faithful. My parents were faithful not only to give the tithe, but to give offerings, to give missions, things like that. And so that was what I was taught. That was what I grew up with. My first job. I want you guys to know, I thought that I had made a lot of money. Just understand, I really thought I was getting paid really, really well. My first job, I got paid 25 cents an hour. 25 cents, you know, U.S. quarter. Yep. It takes 4 of them to make $1, okay, just in case you're wondering. And I thought, ooh, you know, and I worked for 4 hours, I got full $1. The things you can do with $1. I mean, when you're 12, I mean, what do you know? You don't understand what you can and cannot do with $1 very well. But so that was my first job. And I remember, you know, I got full $1. That means 10 cents goes to God. Right? And I was thinking, well, you know, I just don't want to put 10 cents in the offering plate. I'm going to put 10 cents. So I'll just hold on to my money until I can put a whole $1 in. Right? And so my mom and dad were sitting down talking to me, and they're like, so Joyce, you got paid, so what are you doing with your tithe? Well, I'm going to keep my tithe until I have a whole $1. My parents said to me, you can't do that. Tithe gets what's God's right away. Keep to God first. And so, you know, they encouraged me to do that, and then later I got my second job, okay? My second job, I got paid $6 a week. Guys, that was 25 cents an hour, $6 a week. That was a big. My tithe is now a whole 60 cents. Yeah, I was cleaning the church. They paid me $6. It was a 2-story building. All the washrooms, no rugs, guys, no rugs. Mop and wax every floor. It took my $6. Took me 8 hours to earn my $6. So, but you know, it was good. Again, it was this idea of, I still wanted to see it, so I put whole $1s in. I wanted to put $1. They wanted to go clink clink, you know, and dump coins in. And it used to be, you know, they had those flat metal plates and clink clink. You know, it's so embarrassing. So yeah, I wanted. So I solved my problem. My tithe was 60 cents, so I just gave $1. So you know, that way it didn't make any noise. It just that was my solution to that. But the reality is I was trained and I was taught, give to God first. Whether it's 10 cents or $1 or $10,000, give to God first. I have never been in a place yet where I've been able to write a check for $10,000 and give it to God. I'm praying for that day. I would really like that. That would be pretty exciting. I'm not there yet, but I have given dollars. Okay, now I have given some dollars. But we need to be trained ourselves. We need to teach, for those of you, especially who have little people, you need to be teaching your children what it means to give. And to give generously, to pay that tithe and to give it first. So that when they get old like me, it will just be the natural response. It won't be something you have to think about. Sometimes people really, they look at their pay and they think, I only got whatever that amount was for the month. It's really sad when your children start making more money than you. And they smirk because they're making more money than you. They think I'm kidding. All of my children make more money than me. But when we are willing to give to God, He will bless. There will be, and guys, it's not always that I have a lot of money. There are some months when I have a lot more money than I have money in the bank account. But God always supplies what it is I need. And sometimes what I need is something really that's planted deep in my heart, that's truth from Him. It's not really finances. Sometimes it's relationship with people that is far more important than the money that comes into my hands. And of course, when God does bless me with money in my hands, what do I do with those things? How do I spend them? How do I do it? The other thing about giving to God first is that you won't accidentally forget. There was one period in George and I were married life where he came to me one day and he looked like the world was ready to end. And I was like, and he goes, I just looked in the checkbook and I realized I never wrote the tithe check. And it was this devastation for both of us because we've never not written our tithe check first. And it was like, you did what? Like, how could you have done that? Because he does your job, he pays bills. Or he used to, now I get to, but but it was just one of these things that it was like, okay, so now for us, it was really an issue of repentance. Because it was something we got hidden, things were happening, money was going out of our account, left, right, and center, but we hadn't paid our tithe. And so we repented, we asked God to forgive us, and He poured out a blessing. But it was one of those hard things. Next slide, please. God's promising not only to pour out a blessing, but He's saying, and I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, so that he will not destroy the fruit of your ground, nor shall the vine fail to bear fruit for you in the field, says the Lord of hosts. If you go to the next one, it says, every firstborn that comes from an animal which you have, the male shall be the Lord's. For every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. And if you will not redeem it, then you shall break its neck, and all the firstborn of man among your sons you shall redeem. We're given this command over and over and over again. Next slide. The principle of the firstborn, it has to either be sacrificed or it has to be redeemed. Sacrificed or redeemed. Clean animals were always what was necessary for the sacrifice of the firstborn. Right? And if you had an unclean animal, like a donkey, then it was redeemed still with the sacrifice of a clean animal. Next. The unclean is redeemed with the sacrifice of the clean. Now this should have you should see some similarities between what we're looking at in the Old Testament and what we know of in our lives today. You should see some. So next, remember when they got ready to leave Egypt, Exodus was getting ready to happen. The people have been slaves for 400 years. And God calls them to sacrifice the Passover lamb. There's a part of me that I really think God, understand. God really wasn't cruel, but God, in my mind, in one way, was cruel because they had to bring the lamb into their house. And they took care of it for those weeks leading up to the Passover. And so they really got to know the little lamb. And now they have to kill it and eat it. And use its blood. That's not very good. Can we just go get a strange lamb? I don't know, and then it won't be. But they do. They have to take this lamb and they sacrifice it. And they're told exactly how to eat it. Sandals on your feet, coat on, belt on, all your stuff ready to go out the door. Even though they're not leaving that night, remember? And then they put the blood over the doorposts and on the lintels, and then the angel of death comes over. But they are redeemed. They're redeemed by the blood of the sacrificial lamb. There's there. If we look at the next one, in Genesis 22, we see that Abraham's son Isaac is redeemed by a lamb. Again, lamb is being slain in place of his firstborn. Amazing faith on the part of Abraham. Okay. He goes away with his son. The son says, "Hey, Dad, got fire, got wood, there's sacrifice." They walk along through the desert with the servants, get to the bottom of the mountain. Abraham says to the servants, "You guys just wait here. Isaac and I are going to go sacrifice to God, and then we'll be back." Because he does. He uses the plural. "We will return to you." Knowing that God isn't going to make a burnt offering. It's not talking to sacrifice, but, cooking, so these ashes. And yet, Abraham goes up, and he is ready to follow through. even though Isaac was the promised child, even though he's like, you know what, it was like 90-some years before he finally had his child, and we did the whole thing with Hagar, and that was like a no-win. And and now here you're asking me to do this, but God, because you are God, I believe that you can restore it, that you will redeem this. And then, and Isaac wasn't exactly a little tiny baby. I mean, he carried the wood, and yet he willingly laid himself down on the altar. So something about his faith in his father as well as his understanding of who God was, because he willingly laid down on the altar. I cannot even comprehend what it would be to be on an altar and see my father with a knife, ready to say I'm sacrificed. Can't even penetrate my brain. It's like, yeah, not there. But even at that, you see this willingness, and Abraham just keeps saying, God will provide. Don't worry, God will provide. And then as soon as God sees Abraham's obedience, he says, hey, wait, stop! See the ram over there? I'm giving you something else to sacrifice. It's not your first son. And so he does this. And so he's redeemed by the ram. Our next slide, please. It says, but woe to you Pharisees, for you tithe mint and rue and all manner of herbs, and pass by justice and the love of God. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. Go to the next slide. This is what we read this morning earlier, Matthew 23. Woe, you teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites, you give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, cumin, but you've neglected the most important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. And then the next verse, he says, should have done these without neglecting the others. Jesus teaches us this principle, and he ties it to his redemption. We give, and God takes our faith, and he makes the 90% enough to do more than what the 100% has done. We give our firstborn. We dedicated all of our children to the Lord when they were infants. And I remember especially when we dedicated my oldest son, because I was really thinking about this. And I said, so God, do you want him to be a missionary, a pastor? What do you want to do? Okay, he's a respiratory therapist in the Army, not quite what I had in mind, but that's okay. It was God's plan. But recognizing that there was this principle of giving him as a tithe. God, you can do with his life whatever you want, no matter what the cost may be to me. Okay? Letting that be our tithe, because our tithe is our money, our time, our abilities, our gifts. And then God shows us that all of those things can be redeemed through the Lamb. And then he says, and I have the perfect Lamb. And so when we think about Christmas, so I know giving, Christmas, but when we think about Christmas, God gave us Jesus Christ, the perfect Lamb. And he paid it all. He didn't hold back 90%. Right? Okay, well, I'm going to do 10% dying on the cross. And so you get 10% saved. God doesn't do that. Right? Jesus laid everything down. He gave 100% so that we could be redeemed 100%. And then he says, if you will be obedient to me, I will make the 90% more than enough. More than what the 100% could be. And then he challenges us. Don't just stop at the 10%. Okay? Now if you look at Old Testament giving laws, okay, if you want to go there, and I will let you do that. I'm not going to do that with you other than to say, by the time they got done doing all the different offerings throughout the year, and all the different special feasts and festivals, and they gave their tithe, if you really get it down to almost 70% was being given away all the time, so they were living on the and yet they were abundantly blessed and had all of their needs met. They did not lack. The only time they lacked was when they turned away from God. When they walked into disobedience, there was lack. When they walked in obedience, they were blessed. They had everything that they needed. They had health, strength, and resources. And so, when we think about this, God chose to send Jesus, God himself, man, to be our perfect sacrifice. And we remember that at Christmas. And that sacrifice, that 100% giving, is redeemed us. It's caused us to have a relationship with Him. And so when God asks us to give of our money, for our time, for our talents, our abilities, the gifts that He's placed in us, can we say no? I mean, I know we can. I know we're capable of that. But ought we to? Or are we willing to position ourselves to a place where we can say, God, I will choose obedience. I will choose to honor you with the tithe. And when I honor you with the tithe, I'm saying by faith, I know that you're forgiving me. And you have loved me so much, you redeemed me. You saved me. Look at the mess I was. Some of us may look at other people's lives and say, well, God saved them more than He saved me. And, you know, God saved us all the same. We were all destined for hell, and He saved us all the same. I once had the opportunity to talk with a woman. She was about 9 years older than I was at the time. I was a teenager. And we were sitting, we were cleaning out a cupboard, wiping down shelves. It was a really exciting thing we were doing. And I said to her, so, you know, why do you have to Walter Hogan home? And she's like, well, you know, in prison they gave me the option I could stay in prison for another 45 years, or I could go to the Walter Hogan home, and if I went through their program, and if at the end of the program my parole officer really felt that God had done something in my life and that I was a transformed person, then they would let me stay out. And I said, oh, I'm thinking 45 more years, you were in for 8 years, so why were you in jail exactly? You know, I wasn't sure to ask that question. And she said, well, I only murdered 2 people. Literally. I was like, okay. And here we are, keeping at the cupboard all night. But God had transformed her life. And she said, and I said, wow, you know, you have this great testimony. You had all this anger and rage in your life, and it was so overwhelming that you actually took the life of 2 other people, and then God came in and transformed you. And she was this really gentle, quiet, you know, sweet person. If anybody had ever told me, you know, I never would have believed them. But she told me, so I had to believe her. But we see this transformation, and I said to her, wow, you know, and she said, well, no, you don't understand. Your testimony is better than mine. I'm like, no, look at all that God, drugs, alcohol, murder, God's taking you out of all that. No, your testimony is more important because God kept you from all of those things. He didn't have to pull you out of the mess you've gotten into. Not that I was sinless, okay? But sometimes we think, oh, God's sacrifice was so much greater in someone else's life. He did so much more for them than maybe He did for some of us. But the reality is that we are all 100% sinners. And He gave Himself 100% to redeem us all. And so when He asks us to trust Him with our 10%, for all He does for us, I want to challenge you to say yes to Him. Now, I know you guys face some particular challenges. and you know, every pastor should have a guest who can come and talk about giving, okay? Just because it makes it a lot easier, okay? I know you guys face challenges. Number one, most of you are supporting people back in the Philippines. You're not just taking care of your life here in Singapore. Even though life in Singapore can be pretty pricey, especially compared to life in the Philippines, depending where you live. I also recognize that many of you feel a strong sense of obligation, responsibility, gratefulness, thankfulness to your sending church in the Philippines. And so sometimes you're torn. Where does my tithe belong? I have an answer for you, okay? I want to help you here. Your tithe belongs where you're getting fed. If you go to the restaurant and you eat, and you get up and you walk out with paying the bill, there's going to be some repercussions, right? How many of you have ever done that? You went to the restaurant, ate the food, left without paying the bill? And if you did, please don't raise your hand. But we don't do that. But there's many times that we come to God's house. We eat the spiritual food. We walk out without paying the bills. We have lights. We have air conditioning. In the near future, depending on where God moves all things, there's a new projector home we're going to be put in place at some point. there are needs that the church has to supply us. And so as we come together and as God is feeding you in this place, He's also asking you to bring your tithe into this storehouse, because this is what He's going to for the season. That doesn't mean don't give offerings.